I'm going to, if you'll allow me, I'm going to actually stray a little bit from British Columbia in my remarks. I think it's helpful sometimes for us to look at a slightly broader context in terms of what exactly is the nature of the attack on our public services and public education? Where is it coming from? What is its ideological foundation? And what are the avenues that we need to pursue in order to escape from this trajectory? And of course, living here in Canada, there's no more visible place than our neighbors immediately to the south. And I'd like to just begin by talking about the start of the school year and what the start of the school year felt like being a teacher. There's certainly no question that it's been a big year for teachers. Teachers have been in the news. And unfortunately, not always in a good way. We began this school year with the opening of the movie Waiting for Superman. Anybody see Waiting for Superman? Last summer. So Waiting for Superman was a film produced by the same filmmakers who made the film about climate change that was so influential. But unfortunately, Waiting for Superman was a movie that really opened in the American media. They opened the door to say that the problem with public education, the problem with American schools, is teachers and teacher unions. That was the thrust of the film. And that was the opening of the school year. And it wasn't very long after that we then had to watch, I believe it was NBC Network, who put on a giant education gala. And they were going to talk about what's wrong with schools, why is America not at the top or one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, and yet we consistently, our test scores just can't go up. What's going wrong? And you might think that if you were putting on such a gala, you might think that you would invite some of the people who actually teach children in schools. But instead, I believe Bill Gates was one of the keynotes. And in fact, it was corporate America who attended that gala. And the message that began in Waiting for Superman, that public schools are failing, that public teachers are the problem, and that public teacher unions are causing them to be the problem, was again perpetuated. The fall moved into the midterm elections in the US, and I think everybody was pretty aware of the growing dissatisfaction with the Obama government. And Obama, by the way, I should say, was a big supporter of Waiting for Superman, has been a big supporter of the so-called public school reform movement in the U.S. He instituted the Reach for the Top program, where if you cut your union contract provisions, you could get federal monies. And it was really no surprise that much of the Democratic base and much of middle-class America really turned on Obama, and the unfortunate result being the rise of the Tea Party and the election of quite a number of Republican governors in the U.S. And Christmas came, and things were looking pretty gloomy, and there was a real shift. And of course, it began on January 25th, #Jan25, which brought back memories for me. In 10 years ago, I was out at the anti-WTO demonstration in Seattle, and I remember we were in the habit of using similar acronyms. Something would be called J18 for June 18. Well, #Jan25 was the Twitter hashtag for the organizers in Egypt. And I think that was a real turning point in the year. The fantastic show of tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East who had lived under despots, under autocratic regimes, people striving for the simple right to speak their mind, to run in free elections, to have the opportunity to have a say in their society, was absolutely inspiring, and I think sent shivers around the world for those who had relied on these despots to keep a stable world order in which the financiers could be stealing the wealth from the rest of us. And the inspiration of the Middle East didn't end there. It was only a couple of weeks later that, in fact, we had to call it maybe the revenge of the teachers. Similarly, first tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of teachers and other public sector workers and their supporters converged in Madison, Wisconsin, in order to fight what has become a rash of anti-union, anti-people, anti-everyone legislation in the United States. The demonstrations in Wisconsin were, in fact, the largest demonstrations in that locale since the Vietnam War. Not an insignificant number of people. We had the great pleasure at the recent annual general meeting of the British Columbia Teachers Federation of having a speaker from the Wisconsin Education Association. Her name was Betsy Kippers. And it was fascinating because for the last 10 years, I've been coming to forums like this, and I've been speaking at forums like this, and I've been listening at forums like this. And we come and we talk and we say, and I have some of these quotes, and I'll be saying some of them too, but we come and we talk and we say things like, things have gotten so bad in the school system, the cuts have been there for 20 years, the funding in British Columbia for K-12 is $5 billion now. In real dollars in 1991, it was $9 billion. You can imagine the effect that that's had on the system. A special education student who is in Cedar Hill Middle School this year will receive exactly 18 minutes per week to assist them because that's the only funding available. I'm sure many of us in the audience have are familiar with the kind of forum and the kind of discussion. And we've been talking about those things for good reason. We need to talk about those things. We need to make the facts out there. But what was remarkable about listening to Betsy Kippers was that she didn't talk about the bill that Governor Walker brought in. She didn't talk about, the fact that he was a liar and the fact that it wasn't about money and so on. She talked about class, and she talked about unions, and she came to us and she said, this fight is about saving the middle class and saving the working class. This is a fight to save everything that we have built in America. And this is how they've been talking down in Wisconsin. This is the message that the speakers out with 100,000 people listening, and those 100,000 people who went there in Madison, this is the message that they came to bring. It's not just about there's 50 kids in a classroom and that's too many. It's not just about it's been far too long since we put our resources into early childhood education. It's not just about you need $130,000 in the US to even go to the cheapest university and get post-secondary education. This is about the fact that the entire basis of the system, the whole notion that people have the opportunity to have a life with enough to eat, a roof over their head, a house, the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to engage and be part of a civic society is under threat. This was a message about the fact that there are 400 billionaires in the United States, and there are 10% of the population, which is what, there's 200 million, do the math, who don't have a job. I mean, it is obscene. It is absolutely obscene. And the phenomenal thing about Wisconsin, the phenomenal thing about what happened there is that the discourse, the dialogue, the discussion has moved beyond we have 35 kids in our class to, you know what? We're not going to have a decent quality of life if we don't have the opportunity to move forward. You know, you look down to the south and things are always worse there, and that's kind of true, and I'm an American, so I'm allowed to say that. But the reality is that Canada moves the same direction but more slowly. And we have to be vigilant, and we have to be ready for when that 100,000 is coming out in the streets. Because you know what? The frustration and the anger is there. The understanding that this is completely unfair is there. And it's just a matter of time before we have our own eruption into some really significant struggle. I also want to say that those 10 years of going to forums and talking about the nitty-gritty details have been worth it. Because I do not vote Liberal, but I was delighted to read in the newspaper this morning that in their platform is halting the corporate tax cuts that Harper has put through. Because Harper's corporate tax cuts, the HST tax transfer, the Gordon Campbell Liberal tax cuts, they are our version of America's 400 billionaires. And it is time for us to speak out and say it is not about the banks, it is not about the wealthy, it is about ordinary working people, and we deserve to have some of that wealth for ourselves. And I hope that's what we are doing from this day on. Thank you.